Katie Morgan sat very still in the big chair next to her father. The dining hall was huge, with lights that changed colors and tables that floated in the air. She had never seen anything like it before. Her father, Admiral Jack Morgan, wore his best uniform with all the shiny medals. He looked important sitting there with the other grown-ups, but Katie felt very small. All around them sat creatures that looked nothing like humans. To her left sat a tall being made of what looked like living crystal. Its skin sparkled and threw rainbow colors across the table. This was Christic Vor, the ambassador from the Zephyrian people. He was 9 feet tall, and his voice sounded like wind chimes when he spoke. Across from them, a creature that looked like a giant octopus moved its arms in slow, graceful waves. This was the Sarian, one of the oldest beings in the galaxy. His people called themselves Vorthans, and they had been traveling space for thousands of years before humans ever looked at the stars. The insect-like Clixery made clicking sounds that their translator machines turned into words. They had 4 arms each and eyes like black marbles. Their leader kept looking at Katie and making more clicking sounds near the windows. Floating clouds of colored gas moved and shifted. These were the Nethrins, beings made of living air and light. They spoke by changing colors, and Katie thought they were the most beautiful things she had ever seen. Katie opened her drawing book and started to sketch. She always drew when she felt nervous, and right now she felt very nervous indeed. The pencil felt good in her small hands, and soon she was lost in her art. But the aliens noticed her drawing. Christic Vor's crystal face turned toward her, and light danced across his features in what Katie somehow knew was not a kind expression. "Look at the small human," Christic Vor said, his voice ringing like breaking glass. "She plays with primitive tools while we discuss the future of star systems." The Sarian's tentacles curled in what his people used for laughter. "The child cannot even understand the languages we speak. How quaint that the humans bring their offspring to serious meetings." The Clixery began clicking faster, and their translator spoke in flat, electronic tones. Perhaps the small one thinks she contributes something meaningful with her scribbles. How amusing that such a simple species believes itself ready for galactic society. Katie's cheeks turned red, but she kept drawing. Her father squeezed her shoulder gently, letting her know he was there. Admiral Morgan's face stayed calm, but Katie could feel his anger like heat from a fire. "My daughter observes and learns," Admiral Morgan said in his steady voice. "Perhaps there is wisdom in watching quietly before speaking." This made the Clixery click even louder. "Wisdom? From a creature that has barely learned to walk upright. Your species discovered fire only yesterday in galactic terms." The Nethrin clouds shifted to deep purple, which Katie somehow understood meant they were joining in the mockery. One of them pulsed with orange light, and the translator said, "The human child stares at us as if we are curiosities in some primitive zoo. Does she think we are here for her entertainment?" More laughter came from around the table. Katie looked up from her drawing for just a moment and saw beings from 12 different worlds all looking at her with expressions she recognized. They were the same looks the older kids at school gave her when they thought she was too young to understand their jokes. But Katie did understand. She understood more than they thought. She went back to her drawing, her pencil moving with sure strokes across the paper. In her mind, she could hear her grandmother's voice telling her stories from long ago. Stories about a great bird that flew between the stars, a creature so old and powerful that it had watched galaxies being born. "A death bird chooses its friends carefully," her grandmother had always said. "It looks for pure hearts, not clever minds." Katie had always loved those stories, but she had never told anyone that sometimes, in her dreams, she could see the great bird flying through space. Its feathers were black as the emptiness between stars, and its eyes burned like tiny suns as The dinner continued. The aliens kept making jokes about humans. They talked about how young their civilization was, how simple their technology seemed, how funny it was that they brought children to important meetings. Cryst, ec-VO are held up a device that projected pictures in the air. Our youngest students master quantum mechanics before they can walk. Yet here sits a human child who plays with colored sticks on paper. Perhaps, said the Sarian, waving a tentacle toward Katie, we should explain to the small one what we are discussing. Though I doubt her primitive brain could grasp concepts beyond her world's simple gravity. The Clixery clicked their approval. Yes, let us teach the human child about real civilization. She might learn something useful, though I doubt it. Through it all, Katie kept drawing. Her picture showed a massive bird with wings that seemed to stretch across the page. Its eyes looked like stars, and around it she drew smaller figures that looked like the aliens sitting at this very table. But in her drawing, those aliens were not laughing. They were bowing. Admiral Morgan watched his daughter work and felt proud of how she handled the cruel words. Katie had always been special, though he was not sure exactly how. She seemed to understand things that other children missed, and animals. Always loved her immediately. As the dinner finally ended, the aliens were still chuckling about the primitive human child and her simple drawings. They made plans to meet again tomorrow, and several mentioned that perhaps the humans should leave their offspring behind next time. Katie closed her drawing book and stood up with her father. As they walked toward the door, she turned back, once to look at all the alien beings who had spent the evening making fun of her. For just a moment, her eyes seemed older than 8 years. And in that moment, several of the aliens felt something strange, like a cold wind blowing across their hearts. But the feeling passed quickly, and they went back to their conversations about how amusing human children could be. Katie held her father's hand as they walked down the long hallway toward their rooms. She clutched her drawing book tightly in her other hand, thinking about the great bird from her dreams. Tomorrow would be different. She could feel it coming like a storm on the horizon. The deathbird was listening, and it had heard enough laughter for one lifetime. The next morning brought new problems to Harmony Point. Katie woke up to the sound of angry voices coming from the meeting rooms. Her father was already gone, called away early for emergency talks. The Clixery were very upset about something. They clicked and buzzed so loudly that their translator machines could barely keep up. They claimed that Earth had taken minerals from planets that belonged to them, and they wanted the humans to pay for what they had done. Katie got dressed and walked to the dining area for breakfast. The alien beings were there again, but now they looked even more unfriendly than before. They spoke in hushed tones about human greed and primitive expansion. The child is here again, said Christic VOR, his crystal skin flashing with irritated colors. Do humans truly have no sense of appropriate behavior? The Saurian's tentacles moved in slow, dismissive waves. Perhaps keeping their young nearby is some sort of primitive comfort mechanism. Many lower species cannot bear separation from their offspring. Katie ate her breakfast quietly and tried to ignore them. But their words still hurt, especially when they called humans lower species and talked about them like they were animals in a zoo. After breakfast, Katie decided to explore the station. Her father had said it was safe, and she wanted to see more of this amazing place. The corridors were wide and filled with soft, colored lights. Through the big windows, she could see stars and planets that looked like tiny jewels. She found herself in a large room with a curved ceiling made entirely of clear material. It was like standing inside a giant bubble, with space spread out all around her. This was the observation deck, where people came to look at the stars. But today, something was wrong. In one corner of the room, a small cloud of purple and gold gas was growing smaller and smaller. Katie walked closer and realized it was one of the young Nethrons. The gaseous being was barely visible now, fading like smoke in the wind dot around the young Nethron. Several adult aliens stood talking in worried voices. They had machines and computers, but nothing seemed to help. The young being was dying, and no one knew how to save him. "The atmospheric processors are not working correctly," said one of the Zephyrian technicians. "His molecular structure is breaking apart in our oxygen-rich environment. We need to get him back to a methane chamber immediately," said another. "But the nearest one is 3 levels away, and he will not survive the journey." Katie watched the adults argue about technical solutions while the young Nethron grew weaker. His colors were fading from bright purple and gold to pale gray. She could feel his fear and sadness, even though he was so different from her Dot, without. Thinking about it, Katie sat down on the floor next to the dying alien child. The adults barely noticed her, too busy with their machines and their worried discussions. Katie began to hum a little song her grandmother had taught her. It was an old lullaby, simple and soft. She did not know why she started humming, but it felt like the right thing to do. Something amazing happened. The young Nethron's colors stopped fading. The purple and gold began to grow brighter again, and his gaseous form became more solid. The adults stopped talking and stared. Their machines could not explain what was happening. Katie kept humming, and the young Nethron began to pulse with gentle light in rhythm with her song. Slowly, carefully, Katie reached out her hand toward the gas cloud. Instead of passing through him, her fingers seemed to touch something solid and warm. The young Nethron's colors shifted to bright blue and silver, which Katie somehow knew meant he was happy and grateful. He began to make soft musical sounds that harmonized with her humming. "Impossible," whispered one of the Zephyrian scientists. "Sound waves cannot stabilize methane-based life form in this environment." But Katie was not thinking about science. She was thinking about her grandmother's stories, about beings who lived in the spaces between worlds, about the magic that connected all living things. The young Nethron's name was Nixel, and through her humming and gentle touch, Katie began to understand him. Not with words, but with feelings and pictures that appeared in her mind. Nixel showed her images of his home world, where beings like him danced through methane storms and sang with voices that could reshape matter. He showed her the fear he felt when his body started to dissolve, and the wonder he felt when Katie's song made him strong again. In return, Katie shared her own memories. She showed him Earth with its blue skies and green forests. She showed him her grandmother's stories about the great bird that flew between stars, watching over all the children of the galaxy. When Nixel saw the image of the deathbird in Katie's mind, his colors changed to deep, respectful purple. He knew that name. His people had legends about the cosmic bird, stories passed down through generations of gas dancers. The adult aliens watched in amazement as the human child and the Nethron youth communicated in ways their technology could not measure or understand. They saw Katie's drawings come to life as she shared them with Nixel, and they saw the young Nethron respond with colors and sounds that painted pictures in the air. "How is this possible?" asked the Sarian, his tentacles curling with confusion. "The child has no neural interface, no translation matrix. How can she communicate with a methane-based consciousness?" But Katie was not using technology. She was using something older and deeper, something her grandmother had called the song that connects all hearts. When Nixel was finally stable enough to return to his people, his parents came to thank Katie. They were ancient beings, older than human civilization, but they bowed to the 8-year-old girl with deep respect. Through their translator, they said, "You have done what our greatest scientists could not. You have touched the essence of our child's spirit and made him whole again." Katie blushed and looked down at her feet. "I just hummed a song my grandma taught me. I didn't do anything special." But the adult aliens were beginning to understand that maybe they had been wrong about this human child. Maybe there was more to her than they had thought. That night, Katie had the dream again. She was flying through space on the back of the great bird, its wings carrying her past stars and planets. But this time, the death bird spoke to her in a voice like distant thunder. "The time draws near, little one. Those who mock the innocent will learn the true meaning of power. Are you ready to show them what you really are?" Katie woke up with tears on her cheeks, but they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of joy, because she finally understood what her grandmother had been trying to tell her all those years. Was not just a human child. She was something more, something special, something that could bridge the gap between worlds. And tomorrow, everyone would see. Katie woke up to sirens screaming throughout Harmony Point. Red lights flashed in her room, and she could hear people running in the hallways outside. She quickly got dressed and ran to find her father. Admiral Morgan was in the main command center, with all the other important people. His face was tight with worry, and he was looking at displays that showed frightening numbers and charts. "Daddy, what's happening?" Katie asked, tugging on his uniform sleeve. "There's a problem in space near the station," he said, kneeling down to her level. "Something is pulling at us with incredible force. We might have to leave very quickly." Through the big windows, Katie could see that space itself looked wrong. The stars were stretching and bending, like someone was pulling them with invisible hands. Ships that tried to leave the station were getting caught in the strange force and pulled back. The alien leaders were all talking at once, their voices mixing together in a chaos of fear and anger. Their best scientists and their most advanced. Computers could not figure out what was happening. "It's a gravitational anomaly," said Christic Varor, his crystal skin flickering with nervous energy. "But it's unlike anything we've ever seen. It appears to be growing stronger." The Sarian's tentacles writhed with agitation. "Our escape pods cannot break free of its pull. We are trapped here like insects in a web." The Clixery were clicking, so fast their translators could barely keep up. "Our mothership is trying to reach us, but the gravitational field is tearing it apart. We may all die here." Katie listened to all the frightened voices, but she felt strangely calm. Deep in her heart, she knew this was not a random accident. Something was coming, something that had been waiting for the right moment. She walked away from the panicking adults and made her way to the observation deck, the same place where she had helped Nixel yesterday, where she had first felt the connection. Between her song and the young matron's life force, the observation deck was empty now, except for Katie. Everyone else was too busy trying to solve the crisis with their machines and their equations. But Katie pressed her small hands against the clear wall and looked out at the twisted space beyond. "I know you're out there," she whispered. "I can feel you coming." The gravitational force grew stronger, and the station shook like a toy in a giant's hand. Somewhere behind her, she could hear the aliens shouting about evacuation procedures and emergency protocols. But Katie was not afraid. She closed her eyes and began to hum the same lullaby she had sung to Nixel. The melody seemed to echo through the station's walls, mixing with the groaning metal and the frightened voices. As she hummed, Katie began to speak words she had never learned in a language that was older than any civilization in the galaxy. The words came from deep inside her, from a part of her that connected to something vast and ancient. "Come to me," she whispered in that strange, old language. "Come to the one who remembers the songs from before the first star was born." The space outside the observation deck began to change. The twisted starlight started to move in patterns, like a giant whirlpool made of light and darkness. And from the center of that whirlpool, something began to emerge. At first, it looked like just another ship, maybe coming to rescue them. But as it grew larger and more clear, everyone in the station realized they were seeing something impossible. It was a bird, A bird so large that its wings seemed to stretch from one star to another. Its feathers were made of compressed darkness, blacker than the space between galaxies. Its eyes burned with the light of newborn suns, and when it moved, reality itself seemed to bend around it. The Deathbird had come. Admiral Morgan found Katie on the observation deck just as the cosmic creature fully materialized outside the station. He ran to his daughter, ready to pull her to safety, but stopped when he saw her face. Katie was glowing, not with visible light, but with something deeper, something that made her seem both very young and incredibly ancient at the same time. "Katie," he said softly, "what's happening? How do you know about this thing?" She turned to look at her father, and her eyes held depths that seemed to contain entire universes. "It's not a thing, Daddy. It's the Deathbird. Grandma used to tell me stories about it, remember? She said it was real, but I never believed her until now." Through the station's communication system, a voice spoke that was not heard, but felt in the minds of every living being aboard Harmony Point. It was the voice of something that had existed since the universe was young, something that had watched civilizations rise and fall like waves on a cosmic shore. "I have come for the child," the voice said, and it sounded like the music of dying stars. "The one who calls with a pure heart. The one mocked by those who mistake knowledge for wisdom." The alien leaders came running to the observation deck, their fear making them forget their earlier arrogance. They stared in terror at the impossible creature floating outside their station. "What does it want?" Christic VOR asked, his crystal form flickering with panic. "Why is it here?" Clicked the Clixery leader, his translator barely functioning through his fear. But Katie stepped forward and placed her hand on the observation deck's wall. The moment her palm touched the clear material, the Deathbird's massive head turned toward her. Its burning eyes focused on the small human girl, and something like recognition passed between them. "It wants me," Katie said simply. "It's been waiting for me to be ready." The gravitational anomaly that had trapped them all began to change. Instead of pulling everything apart, it started to create a bubble of calm space around Harmony Point. The station stopped shaking, and the twisted starlight straightened into normal patterns. But everyone knew they were now in the presence of something far beyond their understanding. The most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, with all their technology and knowledge, were nothing compared to the cosmic entity that floated outside their windows. The Deathbird spoke again, and this time its words carried the weight of eons. "Let all who hear my voice understand, the child you dismissed as primitive carries within her a connection to forces that shaped the first matter of creation. She is chosen, and she is under my protection." Katie looked at all the aliens who had spent 2 days making fun of her, calling her simple and primitive. Now they stood frozen with awe and terror, finally understanding that they had been wrong about everything. "I have to go to it," Katie told her father. "It's time." Admiral Morgan's military training told him to stop her, to keep his daughter safe inside the station. But his heart told him something different. His heart told him that Katie was meant for this moment, that everything in her young life had been leading to this incredible meeting. The Deathbird waited patiently outside, its wings creating a shelter of starlight around Harmony Point. It had crossed impossible distances to reach this place, drawn by the call of a human child who still remembered how to listen to the songs of the universe. Katie walked toward the airlock, ready to meet her destiny among the stars. Katie walked through the corridors of Harmony Point with steady steps. Behind her, she could hear the frightened whispers of the alien beings who had mocked her just days before. Now they followed at a distance, too scared to get close, but too amazed to look away. Her father walked beside her, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. Admiral Morgan's face showed the struggle between his duty as a parent and his growing understanding that his daughter was something far more special than he had ever imagined. "Katie, sweetheart," he said softly as they approached the main airlock. "Are you sure about this? That creature out there, it's bigger than anything we've ever seen. What if it hurts you?" Katie looked up at her father with eyes that seemed to hold starlight. "It won't hurt me, Daddy. It's been waiting for me my whole life. Grandma knew this day would come. She told me stories to prepare me." The aliens gathered behind them in the corridor, keeping their distance but watching every movement. Christic Vio's crystal skin had turned pale with fear. The Clixery were clicking nervously to each other. Even ancient Thessarian seemed small and uncertain as his tentacles trembled. Katie reached the airlock controls and placed her small hand on the activation panel. Immediately, alarms began to sound throughout the station. The safety systems were designed to prevent anyone from opening an airlock into the vacuum of space. But something strange happened. The alarms stopped by themselves, and the control panel began to glow with soft, golden light. The airlock opened not into the killing emptiness of space, but into a bubble of breathable air that surrounded the Deathbird. "Impossible," whispered one of the Zephyrian scientists. "There's no technology that can create a stable atmosphere in open space without containment fields." Katie stepped into the airlock, and the moment her feet crossed the threshold, a cosmic bird outside lowered its massive head toward her. Its eyes, burning like twin stars, looked at her with what could only be described as love. The Deathbird was even more magnificent up close. Its feathers seemed to contain entire galaxies, swirling with colors that had no names. When it breathed, space itself rippled around it like water. This was a creature that had seen the birth of the first stars and would witness the death of the last ones. Katie walked across the small space between the airlock and the cosmic bird without any fear. The Deathbird bent its great neck and gently touched her forehead with its beak. In that moment of contact, Katie felt a connection that went beyond anything she had ever experienced. Memories that were not her own flooded through her mind. She saw the early universe when it was young and full of wonder. She saw the first creatures to achieve consciousness and how they had danced among the stars with joy and innocence. She saw how that innocence had been lost as civilizations grew, proud and forgot the simple truths that connected all life. But she also saw hope. She saw that in rare individuals, the old connection still existed. Her grandmother had been one such person, chosen by the Deathbird long ago. And now it was Katie's turn. The Deathbird spread one of its massive wings, creating a gentle slope that Katie could climb. Without hesitation, she walked up the wing and settled herself between the creature's shoulder blades, in a place that seemed perfectly made for her small form. As soon as Katie was secure on the Deathbird's back, something amazing happened to her. She was still the same 8-year-old girl, but now she radiated a presence that made even the most ancient aliens bow their heads in respect. The cosmic bird spread its wings, each one spanning distances that should have been impossible. It lifted away from Harmony Point with movements that were both graceful and powerful, carrying Katie into the star-filled darkness of space. From the observation decks of the station, every alien being watched in stunned silence as a human child rode through space on the shoulders of a creature from legend. The sight was beautiful beyond description and terrifying in its implications. The Deathbird began to fly in great circles around Harmony Point, its wings creating patterns of light that painted themselves across the darkness. Katie sat calmly on its back, her small hands resting in its soft feathers, completely at peace in the vacuum of space. As they flew, the Deathbird's voice filled the minds of everyone watching. But now the voice was gentler, sadder, carrying the weight of cosmic disappointment. "Behold the child you deemed unworthy," the voice said. "She possesses what your civilizations have lost in your climb toward technological achievement. She has the ability to hear the songs of creation and respond with wonder instead of analysis. The cosmic bird showed them visions as it flew, images that appeared in the minds of every witness. They saw Katie during the past few days, her quiet attention during meetings she supposedly could not understand, her kindness to young Nixel when all their science had failed, her gentle acceptance of their mockery without bitterness or anger. They saw her drawings and realized now that she had been sketching not just the Deathbird's form, but the very forces they had been discussing in their diplomatic meetings. The gravitational flows, the quantum uncertainties, the space-time distortions, all of it, had been visible to her innocent eyes, while their sophisticated instruments had missed the deeper patterns. CRY-ST-EC-VOR watched from the observation deck, his crystal form dim with shame. "We were wrong," he whispered. "She understood everything. She saw what we could not see." The Clixery leader stood with his 4 arms hanging limp at his sides. His translator was silent because he had no words for what he was feeling. How could they have been so blind? How could they have missed the wisdom that lived in such a young heart? Nissarian's ancient tentacles curled inward in a gesture his people used for deep regret. In all his thousands of years of life, he had never felt so foolish. The human child had shown them compassion and understanding, while they had offered only arrogance and dismissal. The Deathbird's flight around the station became more elaborate, its movements creating a cosmic dance that seemed to celebrate the connection between all living things. Katie laughed with pure joy as they soared between the stars, her voice carrying through space in ways that should have been impossible. Her laughter reached into the hearts of everyone watching, reminding them of feelings they had forgotten in their rise to galactic prominence, wonder, innocence, the simple happiness of being alive in a universe full of miracles. The Nethrin delegation, including young Nixel and his parents, pulsed with colors of gratitude and recognition. They had known from their first meeting with Katie that she was special, but even they had not guessed the true extent of her connection to the cosmic forces. As the Deathbird completed its aerial display, it began to descend slowly back toward Harmony Point. The time for demonstration was ending, but the lesson would last forever. Katie had shown them all what humanity truly was, not the primitive, simple species they had assumed, but keepers of something precious that the other races had lost: the ability to remain connected to the wonder and mystery of existence itself. The cosmic bird touched down gently in the station's main docking bay, its massive form somehow fitting perfectly in the space. Katie climbed down from its shoulders, with careful movements, her feet touching the station's deck with a soft sound that seemed to echo through every corridor. As she walked back toward her father, every alien being in sight moved aside with deep respect. They no longer saw a simple human child, but a representative of forces that transcended all their understanding. The Deathbird began to fade, its purpose fulfilled, but its final message rang clear in every mind present. Remember this day. Remember that wisdom often wears the face of innocence, and power sometimes chooses the smallest vessels to carry the greatest truths. Katie walked back to her father through a corridor filled with silent alien beings. Every creature that had mocked her now stood with bowed heads, their earlier arrogance replaced by something they had not felt in centuries: humble respect. Admiral Morgan knelt down and wrapped his daughter in a tight embrace. His eyes were wet with tears he could not hold back. "Katie, I'm so proud of you," he whispered. "I always knew you were special, but this ... I'm still just me, Daddy," Katie said, her voice soft and tired. The cosmic flight had been wonderful, but it had also taken something out of her. "I'm still your little girl who likes to draw and listens to Grandma's stories." But even as she said it, everyone around them knew that something had changed forever. Katie was still an 8-year-old human child, but she was also something more now. She carried within her a connection to forces that most beings could not even imagine. The deathbird had not disappeared completely. Its form was fading like mist in sunlight, but its presence still filled the docking bay. Before it vanished entirely, it spoke one final time to all the assembled delegates. "Let this moment be recorded in the histories of all worlds," the cosmic voice said, gentle now, but still carrying the weight of eternity. "Today you have learned that evolution and technology are not the only measures of worth. This human child possesses something your advanced civilizations have forgotten: the ability to listen to the universe itself." The great bird's eyes, still burning like stars, turned toward each alien delegation in turn. "You measure intelligence by the complexity of your machines and the reach of your empires. But true wisdom lies in recognizing the sacred in the simple, the profound in the innocent." Christic Vior stepped forward, his crystal form trembling with emotion. The proud Zephyrian ambassador who had started the mockery now struggled to find words adequate for his shame. "Child of Earth," he said, his voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze, "I have committed a grave error. My people have spent so long perfecting our crystalline forms and our light-based technology that we forgot the value of heart. Please forgive my blindness." Katie looked up at the towering crystal being and smiled with the same kindness she had shown to young Nixel. "You don't need to apologize, Christic Veil. You were just trying to understand something new. That's not wrong." The Zephyrian ambassador's form began to glow with colors Katie had never seen before. Later, she would learn that these were the colors his people showed only in moments of deepest reverence and gratitude. The Sarian approached next, his ancient tentacles moving in patterns that spoke of profound regret. "Young human," he said, his voice carrying the weight of millennia, "in all my thousands of years, I have made many mistakes, but none so great as failing to recognize wisdom simply because it came in an unexpected form." The old Vorthan's words were formal, but Katie could hear the real sadness behind them. She reached out and gently touched one of his tentacles, and through that contact, the Sarian felt something he had not experienced since his youth: pure, uncomplicated compassion. "The universe is big enough for all kinds of wisdom," Katie told him, "yours and mine both." The Clixery delegation approached more hesitantly. Their insect-like forms clicked nervously, and their translator devices struggled to convert their complex emotions into words other species could understand. "Small human," their leader finally managed, "our hive minds are designed for efficiency and logic. We do not often encounter individuals who operate on principles we cannot calculate. You have shown us there are forms of intelligence that exist beyond our mathematical models." Katie giggled, a sound that somehow made the terrifying insect beings seem less frightening. "Math is important," she said, "but so are stories and songs, and being kind to people who are scared." Even the Netherins, who had been the most respectful from the beginning, approached to offer their gratitude. Young Nixel's parents pulsed with colors that painted pictures of their deep thankfulness, and Nixel himself created a small light show that told the story of how Katie had saved his life dot as the various delegations expressed their newfound respect. The deathbird continued to fade, but its voice remained clear and strong. "The lesson you have learned today must not be forgotten," it said. "Throughout the galaxy, there are species and individuals who possess gifts that cannot be measured by your instruments or understood by your theories. Seek them out. Learn from them. Do not let pride blind you to the treasures that exist in unexpected places." The cosmic bird's form was now barely visible, like a shadow made of starlight, but its final words rang through Harmony Point with the force of a galactic proclamation. "Earth's children carry within them something precious that you have lost in your climb toward technological mastery. They remember how to wonder, how to love without calculation, how to see magic in the simple act of existence. Guard this gift well. for the universe needs those who can still hear its songs." With those words, the deathbird vanished completely, leaving only the memory of its presence and the changed hearts of everyone who had witnessed its arrival. The gravitational anomaly that had trapped Harmony Point dissolved as if it had never existed. The twisted space around the station smoothed back to normal, and the stars returned to their proper positions. But nothing else would ever be the same. In the days that followed, the entire nature of the diplomatic summit changed. The alien delegations no longer spoke to Admiral Morgan with the condescending tone they had used before. Instead, they approached him with genuine respect and curiosity about human culture and capabilities. CRYST-EC-VO are personally requested a meeting with Katie, not to mock her drawings, but to ask if she could teach some of his people about the art of simple observation. "We have forgotten how to see," he admitted. "Our instruments show us data, but your child sees truth." The Clixery offered to share their most advanced mathematical models with Earth scientists, but they also asked if human philosophers and artists could visit their worlds. "We wish to learn about this thing you call intuition," their leader explained. "Our calculations suggest it operates on principles we do not understand." The Sarian, the ancient Vorthan, spent hours talking with Katie about her grandmother's stories. He was amazed to discover that many of the fairy tales contained accurate descriptions of cosmic phenomena that his people had only recently begun to understand through scientific study. "Your grandmother knew things," he told Katie with wonder. In his voice, "things that we needed centuries of research to discover. How is this possible?" Katie shrugged in the way that only children can. "Grandma said the universe likes to tell stories to people who know how to listen. She taught me how to listen too." The Nethrin delegation, led by young Nixel and his grateful parents, formally invited Katie to visit their homeworld. They wanted her to meet their greatest philosophers and songweavers, beings who might understand the connection between music and molecular harmony that had saved Nixel's life. But perhaps the most significant change came in the formal negotiations themselves. The dispute over mining rights that had seemed so important before now appeared petty and short-sighted. The alien species began to talk about cooperation instead of competition, about sharing knowledge instead of hoarding it. "If a human child can see truths that escape our greatest minds," said the Clixery leader, "then perhaps we have much to learn from each other." New agreements were signed that gave Earth access to technologies and star systems that had previously been forbidden to younger civilizations. But more importantly, cultural exchange programs were established, allowing humans and aliens to learn from each other in ways that went beyond mere science and technology. Katie became something of a celebrity throughout the galactic community, though she never really understood why. To her, she had just been herself and done what felt right in the moment. The fact that this had impressed ancient alien civilizations seemed strange to her. "I didn't do anything special," she would tell the reporters and diplomats who wanted to interview her. "I just listened to what my heart told me, like Grandma always said to do." Admiral Morgan watched his daughter handle the attention with the same grace she had shown throughout the crisis. He was proud beyond words, but also protective. He made sure that Katie still had time to be a normal little girl, to play with her toys and draw in her sketchbook, without the weight of galactic expectations on her shoulders. As their time at Harmony Point came to an end, Katie stood once more at the observation deck where everything had begun. She looked out at the stars and whispered a quiet thank you to the deathbird, wherever it might be flying among the cosmic winds. Her drawing book was full now, filled with pictures of all the amazing beings she had met and the incredible sights she had seen. But the last picture was simple. A small girl and her father walking hand in hand toward a spaceship, ready to go home to Earth. The alien delegations gathered to see them off, no longer the arrogant, mocking beings who had dismissed humanity. Days earlier. They were different now, humbled and enlightened by their encounter with the child who had reminded them of truths they had forgotten. As the Earthship prepared to depart Harmony Point, Katie pressed her face to the window and waved.